Shohei Ohtani is going to be the most valuable free agent in Major League Baseball history, and he could sign with the Texas Rangers. Here's why. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Now, Shohei Ohtani is going to be a free agent next December, barring a contract extension with the Angels, which looks increasingly unlikely by the day. This offseason, the Rangers have made a huge splash, signing the best pitcher on the market, Jacob deGrom, to the biggest deal for any pitcher so far on the market, averaging $37 million average annual value. For the next 5 years, $185 million. They also got Bruce Bochy, a 3-time World Series champion, off his couch, has not managed in several years, to come and manage a team coming off a 94-loss season. And last December, the Rangers shocked the entire world, coming off the worst season since the 1970s in their franchise's history, losing 102 games, the first time they had done that since the 1970s. And they spent $500 million on 2 players, the 2 of the biggest stars on the free agent market in Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, to shore up their middle infield. They also signed John Gray that winter as well, but they shocked the world completely. They shocked the world again this year, twice, once with the Bochy signing to be the manager and once with the deGrom signing. And maybe they'll do another shocking, surprising thing and sign Carlos Rodon. But the Rangers have shown they are willing and aggressive to open that window. They are bypassing the rebuild. They are just hitting sim season or sim sucky seasons to the good part. And they are an aggressive team, showing that they are rebuilding in free agency, and they are not afraid to spend like some of these other teams. But Shohei Ohtani, really? Can the Rangers pull that off? I really think that they can. Now, if you don't know who Shohei Ohtani is, I don't know how you found this podcast. Maybe you just kind of randomly stumbled in here, but Shohei Ohtani is the best player in baseball. He is quite literally baseball god incarnate. He is doing things that it's not just that nobody has ever done before. No one has just gotten anywhere close to him. He is reached unheard of, ascended the celestial plane of baseball. He is an ace pitcher. Absolutely top line, one of the 10 best pitchers in baseball. He showed that this past season, where he absolutely dominated. He's also one of the best hitters in baseball, won his first MVP in 2021, and had Aaron Judge not broken a historic record, and honestly doing it while on the Yankees. I'm pretty darn sure that Shohei Ohtani would have won his second MVP this season. He finished 4th in Cy Young voting this year in the American League, and he's also a hitter. Did I mention that? He's also one of the best hitters in all of baseball. He's also incredibly fast. In 2021, he had his breakout hitting season. 155 games is what he played, and they finally took the reins off of him. Now, as a two-way player, there aren't really any of those in Major League Baseball outside of Shohei, so they gave him more of a buffer. They didn't play him as much. That's the reason why he's a DH. I think he'd be an outstanding right fielder or even center fielder defensively, but because he is a pitcher, they want to save his arm for throws that are off the mound as opposed to in the field, and also save his legs a little bit, because he is just doing way more baseball than anybody. But last year he had 46 home runs, led the league with 8 triples, also stole 26 bases, a 965 OPS. Oh, and also he was selected as an all-star as a pitcher and a hitter. The first person in Major League Baseball to do that last year as a pitcher. He threw 130 innings, 156 strikeouts, did not get Cy Young votes. I don't know how, because he was so darn dominant, and a 3.18 ERA. So, okay, well, if you're not going to give me Cy Young votes last year, I'm going to go ahead and do it this year, because this year took a little bit of a step back as a hitter. Still a really, really good season for a DH, one of the best DHs in baseball. Yordan Alvarez kind of took that Silver Slugger from him this year because he had a fantastic season, but still no slouch at an 875 OPS, which is 45% better than league average. He took a step down in the stolen base category, got caught stealing 9 times, only stole 11 bases, but did have 34 home runs, 30 doubles, and just 6 triples, which did not lead the league this year, but still a phenomenal season as a hitter. But as a pitcher, he took another step forward, a 2.33 ERA, started 28 games this year, by far the most he's had in his major league career, 166 innings and 219 strikeouts. His 11.9 strikeouts per 9 led the league. He was striking out the most hitters per 9 innings in the entire American League. He also did it while not giving up a lot of home runs, a lot of hits, or a lot of walks. All the things that you want your pitchers to do. Strike guys out, pitch pretty deep into the games, pitch fairly consistently, and not allow home runs or walks. He did all of those things while also being a hitter. Did I mention he is a hitter? And a really darn good one. I keep hammering home this point because it's hard to remember that this guy is actually a real person. And part of that is because he plays for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who are not in a good way. They have not made the most of having him and Mike Trout, two of the best players to ever play the freaking game. They have pretty much wasted the primes of both of those guys, and they're probably going to continue to waste their primes. Artie Moreno is selling the team, who has been a disaster of an owner. There was a whole scandal with the Angels being used in a money laundering scheme with local government. It was just, the whole franchise is an absolute mess. They're selling the team now, and while there was some talk about maybe trading him at the deadline, I don't think you can afford to trade him while bringing in a new owner, just trading off the most valuable asset of your team, the guy buying the team. But I also don't know that this new owner, whoever they are, is going to be willing to spend the insane amount of money it is going to cost to retain Shohei Ohtani. Coming up, we're going to look at what that contract might look like, compare it to some of the other deals, and why it would absolutely be worth the risk for the Rangers. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Can we pause the pod for a second? Okay, we're paused. Great, because you've got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors: cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, and coconut brownie topper. Guys, I just bought myself a box of the cookie dough topper. It is absolutely fantastic. They had the Built Bar puffs with cookie dough in them last time that they brought out a few months ago and were fantastic. This cookie dough topper, I tell you, it is absolutely fantastic, and it is so delicious. It is so good for you as well. All of these bars are built with collagen protein, which your body digests more naturally, so it is better for you, and they still taste so phenomenal. I don't know how they do it. Built Bar they're not people who are making candy bars. They are that taste like protein bars. Excuse me, protein bars that taste like candy bars, because that's how freaking good they are. I swear they are food magicians. That is how fantastic they are. And the magical, wonderful time you will have trying all these. Built, you have got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. Now, I led in to this contract talk thinking, okay, I went into it thinking, all right, what kind of a barometer are we having? What kind of thing should we expect for Shohei Ohtani? There has never been anyone like him, and I don't think there ever will be ever again. But as a kind of barometer, I found this tweet from Buster Olney, who was referencing a tweet from somebody else, Paul Hembo of Fangraphs, not Himbo, Hembo. His Fangraphs calculation on Ohtani's hitting and pitching production over the last 1.5 seasons. This was on July 7th, so his MVP season and the first half of 2022. That is $98 million, or average annual value of $65.1 million. Now, he's not, I don't think he's going to get $65 million average annual value. Maybe the Dodgers give him a 5-year, $65 million average annual value contract because they've got a lot of money to spend. But I don't think that's the deal he's going to accept. I think it's going to be a lot longer of a deal, and I'm almost 100% positive going to be the richest contract in baseball history, if not North American sports history, for average annual value. I think there are some other players that are going to make a little bit more money than him average annually in terms of their salary in other North American sports. Like, let's see, where we go. Stephen Curry is making $45 million on the field this year. Matthew Stafford is somehow making $69.8 million on the field. Not sure how that math adds up, but this is according to Forbes, so I trust their math. Aaron Rodgers is making $57 million on the field, and Josh Allen is making $63 million. I don't think he's going to make that kind of money, but it is going to be a lot of money. Let's look at some of the largest contracts in baseball for a kind of reference point of what he's going to make. Number one, the richest overall deal is Mookie Betts, who signed a 12-year, $365 million extension with the Dodgers. That is going for several years, about average annual value of $30 million, maybe 30.1. Not sure the exact math on that. The rest of these I did the math on, but just not that one. Mike Trout coming in at number 2, 10 years, $360 million, 36 a year. That was also an extension. In terms of free agents, this is definitely going to blow away the biggest free agent contract. That was signed by Aaron Judge, 9 years, $360 million, 40 a year, signed with the Yankees this offseason. Then you have Carlos Correa, who also just signed this offseason, 13 years, $350 million, about $27 million a year. Then you have Francisco Lindor, Fernando Tatis Jr., Bryce Harper. Corey Seager is at 8th in 10 years, $325 million, 32 and a half average annual value. And then all the way down at 10th is Garrett Cole, 9 years, $324 million, 36 average annual value. So Ohtani, the things that he wants in his deal are he want to make the largest average annual value. And none of these guys are the largest average annual value. They're up there. They're up there, but none of these guys are the top. Those are two guys who are on the same team in the same rotation. Max Scherzer making $43.333333 million average annual value the next 3 years, and Verlander making the exact same amount for the exact same team on the New York Mets. Aaron Judge at $40 million average is the next, and in fourth, actually, is Jacob deGrom with $37 million average annual value. So I thought that was pretty darn interesting. And in terms of what I'd sign him to, if he was just a pitcher, I think I'd sign him to a 6-year, $180 million deal. Now you can get into kind of the things that would be different of how much he would pitch if he was just a pitcher, how healthy he would be if he was just a pitcher. I still think around 6 years, $30 million a year, so $180 million total is about what I would give him. He's going to be going into his age 29 season next year, so that would take him through his age 34 season, I believe, as a pitcher. Maybe he might get a little bit more, but if he was just a hitter, and this kind of is where I did a little more complex mental gymnastics, because if he was just a hitter, then he'd probably be playing center field or right field and be, I think, an outstanding defensive outfielder. I don't know how much of the field that he played in Japan. I don't think it was all that much because, again, he knew that he wanted to go to Major League Baseball and was going to go be there and be fantastic. And so there's a little more carefulness around protecting himself from injury because, again, he is doing so much more baseball than everybody else. But if he was just hitter, I think I might sign him to a 10-year, $350 million deal. I feel like that's about what it would be. So $35 million average annual value, not the richest contract in baseball, but still a really, really good contract. But in case you forgot, he's a pitcher, he's also a hitter, and he's incredibly good at both of them. So in terms of what I think he'll get, what I would sign him to, I would be willing to go 10 years, $530 million, and I think the Rangers would too. I think the highest it might go is 10 years, $600 million. I don't know if he'll get that because that just feels like such a leap over everything that everyone else has done, and contract values keep rising. But I think 10 years, $530 million would definitely be enough to get it done. I think there are other teams that are going to be in the bidding for this guy, but the Rangers have shown a propensity to go a little long on the years where other teams are more hesitant. They did it with Jacob deGrom. They did it with Corey Seager. They did it with Marcus Semien. And I think they will and would and should do that with Shohei Ohtani. But who else is going to be in this bidding war, and why would the Rangers stand a chance? The middling Rangers, who have been pretty mediocre for the entirety of Shohei's entire major league career. We're going to get into that and more. But first, this word from our sponsors. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home. So what are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're going to be okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Now, why are the Rangers in the running for this guy? Besides, you just think that the Rangers are going to sign everybody. Oh, you just think that everything is going to go hunky-dory for the Rangers. Well, everything has not gone hunky-dory for the Rangers in pretty much their franchise's history. But I do think this is a turning point kind of a time for the Texas Rangers franchise. And why I think they should be in the running is that they were among the 7 finalists last time around when he was coming to Major League Baseball, Shohei Ohtani that is, to sign him. The other finalists were the Mariners, the Giants, the Padres, the Angels, the Cubs, and the Dodgers. And honestly, I think that's going to be the main competition to sign Shohei Ohtani this time around. I think the biggest competition is probably going to come from the Padres, Angels, and Dodgers. Maybe the Cubs throw their hat around. They have shown a propensity to sign some Japanese players. They are a team that is in a weak division looking to move up. The Padres are always willing to throw a crap ton of money at everybody, and it's possible that Manny Machado could opt out of his deal that offseason. The Dodgers have a suspiciously low payroll at this point. They haven't signed any of the major free agents. They could still go sign Dansby Swanson. I think they're still in need of a shortstop or at least a middle infielder. Maybe not, and they'll still be fine because they're the freaking Dodgers and that's just what they do. But their payroll is sitting pretty sus right now. And the Giants, well, they just showed they're willing to spend a bunch of money with anybody, so maybe they could be in on this. But let's think about Shohei Ohtani, the baseball player, and the things that he wants. He wants to compete. He wants to win. He also doesn't like being the center of attention. He is a baseball weirdo, just an absolute baseball. I don't want to use this word, but I do. Baseball savant, for lack of a better word. This is all he focuses on. This is all he cares about, is just getting better at baseball, being the best baseball player ever. And, his hard work has really, really paid off. And, a lot of times teams, when they sign big free agents to these deals, they want them to be a little more out of their shell. They talk about, if you're New York media, you talk about, he's got to be a leader, an alpha, an A-dog, blah, 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 whatever nonsense that they didn't like about deGrom, or, they want them to be vocal leaders or whatever. Or if you're the Rangers, you just sign the best freaking players and let them go do their thing and don't force them to be someone they're not. And this personality type kind of fits to a T the 3 biggest superstars the Rangers have signed the last 2 off seasons. deGrom, very much a keep to himself, not a rah-rah clubhouse speech guy, just a leader by example. Same with Corey Seager, same with Marcus Semien. all those guys are baseball robots programmed for maximum efficiency and out there to do one thing and one thing only, and that is hit the crap out of baseballs or just be the best player on the freaking diamond. And they do a really good job of that. And that is what Shohei is like as well. And I feel like he also doesn't want a big circus around him. I mean, there's always going to be a big circus around him because he is an international star, should be the face of baseball if he's not already. And I don't think you guys realize how insanely obsessed with baseball the Japanese media are, and just Japan in general. They love baseball. They love Shohei Ohtani. They loved Yu Darvish when he was here with the Rangers. The amount of Japanese media just to cover everything that Yu Darvish was doing with the Rangers was kind of insane. I mean, the one game that I went to this year that I covered was the Rangers game against the Angels, and just seeing how much Japanese media is there just to get a photo of Ohtani, just to be in the same building, to talk about what it was like, how he impacted the game. It's just absolutely incredible. And he doesn't want a whole lot of flash and substance. That's why I think the Yankees and the Mets and the East Coast was kind of less on his mind. I think he likes the West Coast because it's a little bit closer to home, a slightly shorter flight back home to Japan, and I think that is kind of the reasoning there. The Rangers aren't quite on the West Coast, but they will play on the AL West quite a bit, and I think that Arlington is, it's a Cowboys town. No matter how good he is, even if he is his current level of insanely, historically good, he's never going to be the biggest center of attention. He's probably never going to be the third most focused on star in Dallas. I mean, you've got probably two Cowboys and whoever the quarterback is and Micah Parsons. I mean, it's like literally always there's probably two Cowboys players that are the most focused on. And then, he's not even the biggest international star in that market with Luka Doncic there. So he can just go and play baseball and be amazing at it and be appreciated by the people who appreciate people who are great at baseball, and that be the whole thing. I think that could be a really, really appealing vision for him. A lot of it is going to come down to winning, though. Obviously, some of these other teams have a more recent history of winning in terms of the Padres and the Giants. Both of them have made the playoffs much more recently than the Rangers, even the Mariners have. Even, I think the Cubs have. I think. They definitely, all of these teams, outside of the Mariners and the Padres, all of them have won a World Series more recently than the Texas Rangers. The Dodgers are perennially good, but I think that might be a little bit too much of a sideshow. And, it's obvious to say, oh, wow, he's going to go to the Dodgers. That's not fun. That's not fun to talk about. Maybe it'll be the case, and it'll be boring, and he'll go get 10 years, $500 million for the Dodgers to go play there, and everyone will be really upset and annoyed. And he can just go be there and be like the 87th most famous person in LA. Maybe. But I do think that the Rangers' ability to sell themselves, if they have a competitive season this year, if they make the playoffs this year, if they finish ahead of the Angels, I think that is a very, very important thing. And I was really, really frustrated by them not finishing ahead of the Angels this year in the AL West. They were just a little bit behind. Actually, 5 games behind is what it ended up, because they had such a miserable end to the season. But if the Rangers finish with a better record than the Angels, who, again, it seems like on paper, I feel like I can say that a lot of years about the Angels. It feels like on paper they have a pretty decent team, a really good rotation with some young stars, and Shohei Ohtani leading the way. Patrick Sandoval, Jose Suarez were pretty good. Reed Detmers had some real moments last year. Tucker Davidson is fine. The bullpen has some names in there. Aaron Loop, Jaime Barria, Ryan Tepera, Jose Quijada. All those guys are pretty good. The lineup should be amazing. I mean, you have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. That alone should make a lineup amazing, but they have decent depth behind them in Anthony Rendon, should he ever be healthy. Jared Walsh had a pretty good year last year. Not quite his best, but still pretty good. And Taylor Ward also had a pretty darn good year as well. So, I mean, theoretically, they should be decent, but it's just always the Angels. Things just always go wrong for them. And, well, for the last few years, things have always kind of gone wrong for the Rangers, too. But that's why I think this year is very, very important. If the Rangers can make the playoffs this year, can show, hey, we are right there with the best teams in baseball. And Fangraphs, according to Fangraphs projections for WAR for starting pitching rotations, the Rangers have the best rotation in the American League, according to WAR projections by Fangraphs. Just let that sink in. And Shohei Ohtani joining that rotation would be absolutely incredible. The lineup has some depth. You have some stars. He would have protection, not quite Mike Trout level protection, but still some pretty decent protection. The Rangers have offensive stars like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe. Having them plus Shohei Ohtani as a top four would be pretty clearly, far and away, I think, the best top four in any lineup in all of baseball. Maybe the Dodgers would be pretty darn close with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and whoever else is hitting in the top four for them. But I really do think that would give the Rangers, if you sign Shohei Ohtani, I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. By the way, speaking of that contract, how could the Rangers afford it? Well, next year, their projected tax payroll is at $141.9 million. If they signed Shohei to my hopeful $530 million, 53, just say he makes $53 million a year per year for the entire life of that contract. Well, that would put them at $191.6 million in terms of how it stacks up against the cap and the luxury tax, not a cap. The luxury tax is at $237 million next year. So that'd leave them about, well, $45.4 million to spend on other additions. That would be, that includes Andrew Heaney's deal next year. Should the team, or should he pick up that second option and stay here for another season? Martin Perez would be a free agent next year, so if they signed him to a $15 million deal, then that's your rotation of deGrom, Shohei, Martin Perez, John Gray, Andrew Heaney. That is, I would think, one of, if not the best rotations in baseball. Plus the back end, there are going to be some guys coming up in Jack Leiter or Owen White or maybe Cole Winn fighting for that number 5 spot in the rotation. That would be absolutely incredible. You have the depth of your lineup. You have your everyday DH, and no disrespect to Mitch Garver, but I think Shohei Ohtani is just a little bit better of a hitter than Mitch Garver if he is the Rangers' full-time DH this year, which he won't be, but he'll be a free agent as well. And that would be just, oh my gosh, just think of how absolutely incredible that would be for a moment. Maybe it won't happen, maybe it will, but I'm thinking there is a better than zero chance that the Rangers are in on this guy and that this guy is in on the Rangers. I mean, Chris Young, the ability he's had to talk these big free agents into signing with the Rangers, the fact that he did it with those two middle infielders after a terrible season, the fact that he was able to convince a Hall of Fame manager to manage again, reset his Hall of Fame clock, and come into a situation that has not been super great, but definitely has some promise, and to convince Jacob freaking deGrom to leave the 100-plus win Mets to come sign with the Rangers, who have averaged 98 losses for the last 2 years. That is an incredible salesman, and I think that is the best characteristic Chris Young has as a general manager. If he can do it again next year and convince Shohei Ohtani to sign with the Texas freaking Rangers, and ownership continues to shell out money like they have the last 2 off seasons, I mean, just induct that man into the Rangers Hall of Fame like after Shohei signs the freaking contract. I don't care what happens after. Granted, there is a lot of risk in this. He has had some pitching injuries. He has had some seasons where he has not been quite himself, but for the most part, he's been fairly consistent since he made it to the major leagues. He had one really off year as a hitter, 657 OPS in 44 games in 2020. I'm willing to write that off because that was an off year for everybody. His rookie year played 104 games with a 925 OPS. Never had an OPS lower than 848 outside of that one season. His career OPS is 886. His 162 game average as a position player, averaging 36 home runs, 29 doubles, 6 triples, and a 354 on base. Did I mention that he pitches as well? This would be an incredible signing. I think everybody and their mothers is gearing up for a Shohei Ohtani bidding war next year. And if it goes into the $500 million range, well, the Rangers have shown they are more than willing to spend $500 million in one offseason. Maybe next year, we're talking about the greatest free agent coup in Major League Baseball history, signing with the Texas freaking Rangers in Shohei Ohtani. That's going to do it for this week's editions of Locked On Rangers. We'll be back on Monday with a mailbag. I put out the call on Twitter for your questions. You can send your questions in via comment on YouTube or wherever. Maybe you can even comment on Facebook. Go follow and like Locked On Rangers on Facebook. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Locked On Rangers. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.